Hello, Richard here, and today I want to talk to you about my favourite derusting solution, which is built amber Deox-C. Now, my kids think I'm a little bit weird because I have things like favourite derusting solutions. They also mock me a bit because I have a favourite astrophysicist, as if anybody doesn't have their favourite astrophysicist. So anyway, yeah, this is my favourite derusting solution, and in this video I want to talk a bit about this and show you how it works on this array of rusty things that I need to have derusted. Now, I've used a lot of derusting solutions in the past, going all the way back into the sort of mid-80s, when things like these rust converters first came on the market, and the idea was you'd get this kind of like milky fluid and you paint it on your rust and it would turn it into a black impervious oxide. And in reality, it turned the top layer into a black impervious oxide with the rust still underneath, and the rust would bubble back through. And yeah, I wasn't that impressed with those. Now, for a long time, my favourite solution was just good old table salt mixed with malt vinegar. And you just get vinegar, white or brown, didn't really matter. And you just mix in as much salt as it would take and soak your things in that overnight. Now, that was fine. It was a bit smelly, especially if you use the brown vinegar. And it can be a bit unpredictable as well. I found it difficult to know just how strong it was going to be. And a few times I'd put rusty tools in there to come back the next morning and find that part of them had been eaten away. So wasn't too impressed with that. Now, I know evapo-rust is a very popular solution as well, and I've tried that. Now, I didn't get on with it all that well because I found, although it worked, it just didn't seem to last. If I put it in a sealed tub and left it, it just didn't seem to keep on working. It was like it sort of wore out after a fairly short period of time. Now, the thing with evapo-rust here in the UK especially is it's expensive. Evapo-rust costs £20 a litre. I mean, I can buy rum for less than that. You know, this stuff, you buy it by the kilo, and it's about £20 a kilo. You can mix this 1 part to 19, which means that this basically makes you 20 litres. So whereas evapo-rust in the UK is about £20 a litre, this is about £1 a litre, depending how strong you mix it. Now, that's the other advantage of this as well, you see. Because this comes as a powder, it means you can actually make whatever strength you like with this. Now, the makers recommend that the basic solution for this is 1 part of powder to 19 parts of water. And you can mix it by volume or by weight, which is handy because if you have a litre of water, that will weigh 1 kilogram. To every 1 litre of water, you would add a 19th of a kilogram of powder. So what I'm saying is you can measure the water by volume and the powder by weight. I'll show you how that works in a minute. We'll mix some of this stuff and we'll actually have a go at it, and I'll show you it in action. Now, before we get on and have a look at how this works, how to mix it up, what sort of job it does on all these parts, the other thing to bear in mind is that I always use this at its weakest suggested dilution, and that works fine. I fully expect to be able to put these components into a 1 to 19 parts solution, and overnight it will derust them. But the beauty with this as well is that you can make it as strong or as weak as you like. So if you had a real nightmare, rusty, horrible boat anchor to derust or something like that, you can go up to 1 to 4 with this. So you can have 1 part of powder to 4 parts water, and that'll probably fizz if you put things in it. So you can vary it. That's another great thing with this. It varies. But what I was saying earlier as well about the sort of the lifespan of this. Now, I've got a tub of this that I mixed up about 18 months ago for a small tub for putting small tools in, and it's still working. Even though it's cheap, it seems to keep on going. I'm sure it does have a finite sort of life cycle when you're doing lots of derusting, but it seems to last quite well. Anyway, let's have a look. Let's get some mixed up. We can get all these parts in, and then we'll see how they derust. I've got quite a few parts to derust, so I'm going to use a big old tub, and I'm going to need a fair old bit of this. I'm going to start off mixing up 5 litres and see how that does. So according to the instructions, we need to mix this at 1 part of powder, 1 part of Deox-C to 19 parts of water. Now, as I say in the instructions, you can mix by weight or by volume. And as a litre of water weighs 1 kilogram, that makes it quite handy. So what we'll do is we'll get the calculator out and we'll work out 1 divided by 19. That gives us 0.052, so remember that number. We want 5 litres of solution, so that's 5,000 grams, 5 kilograms, 5,000 grams. So we want to times our 5,000 by this magic number, 0.052. So 0.052 times 5,000 is 263 grams. So we need 263 grams of this to make up 5 litres of solution. So let's weigh out 263 grams of this stuff. Right, so we've got the scales. Let's just turn them on. Hello, says the scales. There we go. Right, 0. Now we need 263 grams of powder. So let's see if we can measure out 263 grams. That's where I hope my tub's big enough. Almost. Will it make it? 240, 250, 269. That'll do. Just made it. So the next thing to do is get 5 litres of water, and then we'll mix it up in the tub. Okay, so I've got 5 litres of water in the bucket. So let's just put that in the tub. For the next bit, I'm just going to put on some gloves and a pair of safety glasses. Now, this stuff is supposed to be non-toxic, but I don't know whether it's any good if it goes in your eyes or on your skin, so best be safe, so I'll do that. So now all we need to do is to mix the powder into the water. Then we just give it a mix until it's all dissolved. Now, this does work a lot better, actually, if you use hot water. They say, I think, up to 90 degrees C, but check the label. I've done it before with sort of hot water from the tap, and the powder does dissolve in a lot quicker if you use hot water. So, we'll get this mixed in, and I'll bring you back when we're ready to put some stuff in it. Now, this stuff takes a little bit of dissolving. You can see now it's quite clear. That's probably taken about 10 minutes to dissolve into cold water, so just bear that in mind. It takes a little bit of time to get it all fully dissolved. Anyway, let's start adding some parts. I've got quite a few parts to derust, so let's get loading it up. Now I've got quite a few parts to fit in here, so I'm going to have to play Tetris for a while, see if I can get them all to line up. So I'll bring you back in when I've worked out how it's all going to fit. As I said, I've got quite a lot to derust, and it's not all going to get immersed by that 5 litres. So here's another 5 litres that I previously used. So we'll add that in and see if that covers it. That's pretty much got most of it. The legs of the vise aren't going to go in, so I'll have to flip them over later on. But everything else is pretty much immersed. We'll leave that for probably 5 or 6 hours, come back and see how it's doing. Well, that's been stewing for about the past 5 hours, so I'll bring you in a bit closer and we can have a look and see what's going on. Okay, well, as you can see, the liquid's gone a sort of greenish yellow colour now. And there's quite a lot of effervescence going on, sort of mild fizzing. So hopefully you can see that on the camera. You can just see the bubbles breaking the surface there as things are going on. There's definitely a slight aroma to it as well. Originally the solution was odourless, you couldn't smell anything. Now it's got that sort of distinct sort of metallic kind of sulphury smell to it. It's not very strong, but it's there. So let's have a look at a few bits and just see what sort of state it's in after 5 hours. So that's starting to come off. And bear in mind, the metal is going to look quite grey. It's not going to look shiny. It's going to look quite sort of dull and grey when it's done. It's definitely shifting the rust. It needs more time though, really. It's getting quite late in the evening now, so I'll probably leave this overnight. But we'll have a look at some of the other bits, because different things might do it at different rates. Let's have a look at this block here. This wasn't too bad. That's really good, actually. There was quite a lot of surface rust on the top of that before, and that has cleaned up really nicely. In fact, I'd call that done. That didn't really need much. So with that, I'm going to call that one done. I'll get another container to put some of these parts in, and then I can rinse them off. Okay, what else have we got? We've got this little the plate for the nut box. Wow, that's that's beautiful. That's really nice. That's a bit of a sticker left on there, so that will just come off, but that's pretty much rust-free now. That's absolutely great. So we'll put that to one side. And then we've got this, the little bracket that holds the nut on. So that's doing quite well. A lot of that rust's actually coming off. It's not quite there. You might want a little bit longer. So I could call that done right there, but I might give that a little bit longer to soak. The quick release bar. Yeah, you can see a lot of the rust coming off. You get sort of dark liquid on there. So that's coming on very well. That still needs a bit longer, but we've got rid of most of it. And then with this as well, it helps just to agitate it and loosen the surface rust off so it can carry on soaking for a bit longer. Now let's have a look at this back of the vise here. See where that is. You see that's starting to clean off very nicely as well. In fact, most of the rust is loosened off of that. Most of it's come off the sides. So I may well stop it there. Let's see what it's like underneath. There's a little bit more there. But it was resting on these surfaces, so it could probably do with going in upside down to what it was, just to let the solution get at those hard to get at surfaces. But again, that's coming up really nicely. Again, 5 hours, that's all on the weakest solution. And the lead screw from the machine vise, that's come up really well as well. So yeah, it's doing its job really. I don't know that I need much more derusting on this. There's a bit of rust underneath there, but even that would be good enough to call it done and just clean the rest up with a little bit of abrasive paper. What I'll probably do is let this soak a bit longer and then come back in another couple of hours just to see how it's done, because it's all so nearly there. I don't want to leave it too long. So let's have a look at this big old bit of vise here. This was very heavily rusty on the back. I don't know how long I can hold this up for to show you, but that's cleaned up really quite well. You can see the rust is just falling away now. Really happy with that. So I don't know how well you can see that, but that is on the bottom there is, I would say that's rust free now pretty much. Maybe a few tiny spots. Now a lot of the rust did actually come off this during the paint stripping process. I stripped the paint off and gave it a bit of a wire brushing, so that's going to have removed some of the rust in itself, but that's cleaned up really, really nicely. In fact, I think I'm going to call that done. I don't see the point in leaving that soaking, so we'll call this big piece done at this point. And then finally, let's have a look at the sliding part of the record vise. And there you go. That was, if you remember how much rust was on that before. Okay, most of it was just sort of flash rust, but it's just completely gone. Completely clean now. Doesn't even need any brushing on that really. It's just really, really blitzed the rust off there. So I'm really happy with that. Let me get it where you can see it. So it still looks rusty, but if you just give it a bit of a brush, you see that just comes off now. Now I do need to do the other end of the legs so they can go back in for a bit of a soak at that end. Okay, right, well let's put that back in for a soak, see if we can get those immersed. Right, so what I'm going to do with the remaining parts that have a few little stubborn bits of rust on, I'm just going to give them a bit of an agitate and a bit of a brush. Come back in probably another 2 hours and I think it will be done, so that's the plan. Well, here we are, all done. I gave everything an extra about 2 hours to soak, which took care of most of the smaller parts. But the larger parts like the record vice jaw and handle, that needed a bit longer. So that got left overnight, which is why it's now the next day and ready to show you where we are. So let me give you a bit of a fly past as to how this is done. Okay, so you can see that's the vise. Most of that's come up nicely, and the vise handles as we swing by over here. Done a really good job of getting all that rust off, especially on the base of the metal vise, the milling vise. That's come up really nicely, and that happened quite quickly on that one. Now, I'll just bring you in a bit closer on some of these parts now. If you look at this nut box cover from the record vise, that's really, really clean now. You can see here there's a little bit of residue from the label. That's not rust on there. That's just label residue. So that's cleaned up really nicely. The legs of the vise, as you can see there, they've come up really well too. Actually, you can see some numbers stamped in here. I don't know how well you can see that. But yeah, they're really clean now, so they don't really need anything doing at all. To be honest, just a little bit of lubrication on there, and they're good to go. They don't need polishing or anything like that. I might check to see if there's any burrs on there, but in terms of rust, that's really clean now. And you can see behind as well. No rust on there. Now the milling vise, let me see if I can lift this up for you. That cleaned up really nicely. So the base of that was really quite grotty and horrible. And again, that's pretty much ready to go. Might need a little bit of a stoning just to make sure there's no burrs on it, but that's come up really nicely. Again, there's a little bit of flash rusting on the sides, which has just sort of happened since it's been rinsed off and left to dry. But yeah, it's really got that cleaned up. And the sliding jaw of the milling vise, again, that's come up really cleanly. And that happened quite quickly. There's a little bit of dirt, rust, paint, something on there. That can just be cleaned up with a bit of abrasive. And I'll probably just shine this up a little bit. You see, after you use this deruster, you do get a bit of pickling of the metal. It goes a little bit dull grey. Doesn't really hurt it. It doesn't really matter. You could live with that. If you want it a bit brighter, just polish it up with a bit of emery cloth, something like that. So yeah, it's done a great job overall. Well, there you have it. That's my favourite derusting solution and an example of how it works and what it does and the results you get with it. Now, it's worth saying as well, I'm not sponsored by Built Hamber. They don't pay me to say any of this. This is just all off my own back. It's just a product I really like using, and if you're not familiar with it or you haven't heard of it, then hopefully this will help you out. But I will put a link to the product down below. I'll put an Amazon link below, which is an affiliate link, so if you click it, I'll earn a few pence. Now, I know everyone's probably got their own favourite rust treatment system, so if you've got one different to this or one you think's better than this, let me know in the comments. Let me know what you use and why you like it. Share it with the community, and we can all learn from that. So we'll leave it at that, and looks like I've got a couple of vices to rebuild.